Okay, this is the piece Suffocation by Frederick Chopin in E minor. Okay. Wow. That was not bad. Oh. Um okay, so um yeah, so my current state. So I I just wrote down, hold on, let me write down. Okay. So yeah. Altogether, I didn't do that badly. I think I missed about 3 or 4 measures out of the whole piece, which is really good. Um, but yeah, so here's my graph. Let me hold it up. So you see the progression. So I'd say out of 25 measures, my final would be about what? Yeah, 22 measures altogether. So 3 measures I missed. Um, so yeah, so some challenges and some successes that I had. What was a challenge? A challenge for me, well, one of them is just like discipline in general and making sure that I practice. I would end up practicing really late, and I also didn't take into account the fact that the space that I'm using right now isn't always available. So that made it kind of hard to rehearse. I had to bounce around to like the chapel. I practiced in there, and I practiced in Merrick as well because they all have pianos. So that was definitely a challenge. Also, just remembering, so I used to play piano, which is why I chose this skill because I wanted to see if I could get back into it. And a challenge that I forgot about was just like knowing how to practice well when playing the piano, because one of the hardest parts is like transitioning from like really like far away and like just getting those transitions down. So even when you finally practice a hard transition, now you have to practice it from a different point so that so it flows and goes all together. And I'd forgotten about that, so you kind of have to be relatively meticulous. A success that I had, I guess, would be getting to the end relatively okay. Um, I definitely would call that a success. Um, yeah. What might I have done differently? Yeah, I guess just like not procrastinate as much, and not give up so fast. Sometimes I would practice and I would get really frustrated with myself and be like, okay, like I quit, like I'm done. So I guess I wouldn't do that. In terms of the Fitz and Posner motor skill stages, the interesting thing about piano is if you're not like fluent in the language of music and like reading it, you often can get to a stage that's autonomous, but once you start a new piece, you go back to the cognitive stage. So I definitely wasn't autonomous, but I would say I was at least associative overall when I last finished playing piano, like when I was younger. So I definitely came back to a cognitive stage with this new piece. And I would say I'm associative because when I messed up, I was able to I didn't just stop the video and start over. I could figure out where I was and like get back on track. Yeah, and this relates a lot to what we've been learning about in class, like especially with like the book How We Learn, and just like really practicing those things that make it a lot easier to learn. So something that I found really helpful was spacing. So sometimes in one day, I would practice multiple times a day, and that made it so when I would practice the second time for the day, I would feel way worse off than how I finished the first time. But that is actually a good thing because you're receiving feedback and you're kind of seeing it in a different way because you've just come back to it. Also, sleeping like really helped me consolidate like what I had learned that day. So the next day I would come back to it and feel a lot better about it than I had when I finished the other day, just because I was consolidating all of what I'd learned and stuff. And then also just like, so one of the challenges that actually might have served as a success was that I had to move around, but that helped me. So I was practicing in different locations and associating different contexts to what I was learning, which is another thing we talked about in class, in terms of elaborative encoding, making sure everything was deeply processed, and stuff like that. Yeah, I think that just about